So my name's Robert Richman. I'm a culture strategist, a keynote speaker, and most recently an author. I've put together everything I've learned about culture as a speaker and a facilitator. And I've had the privilege of working with amazing companies and individuals, entrepreneurs all the way up to companies like Toyota, Intuit, Eli Lilly, Zappos.com, and learned about what really works well in cultures. And I've taken a lot of the lessons that I learned there really from these amazing companies and put them into this book to help other companies create amazingly strong cultures. The Culture Blueprint is a step-by-step guide to creating a high-performance culture. And it comes out of my work as an entrepreneur and also as a culture strategist for Zappos.com and the manager of Zappos Insights. And Zappos Insights is the company within Zappos that teaches other companies all about culture and customer service. And there we had thousands of people come through to take our classes and events. And I got to learn not only all about the Zappos culture, but from all these top level brands and entrepreneurs coming through, learning about their culture challenges and working through them. And I took that and really compressed all the best information into a guide to save people years worth of tinkering of what works and wouldn't work within a culture, and create a step-by-step guide that goes from everything from vision and values to attracting the right people to the company, training and onboarding them, developing great customer service, developing innovation within the company, and engagement and leadership, as well as troubleshooting issues like how to deal with conflict resolution in terms of entitlement and all these things that can sometimes get in the way of culture. And so it's this step-by-step guide to create it, and also culture hacks, really fast things that can be done to shift a culture immediately. So the Culture Blueprint 1.0, I printed up for a limited audience and sent several thousand copies out to companies and individuals to try it out and get feedback. And most of it was really fantastic. What I found, though, was that I'd underplayed this concept of opt-in, this idea that everything in culture really has to be voluntary. Because I would sometimes see people would take the book and mandate that other people read it. They would say, you have to read this book. And I realized making anybody do anything when it comes to this culture work is actually going to be really harmful. So I added new ways to make sure that this idea of opting in, that you make sure that people are really passionate about it, is included in the book, as well as several updates to various sections based on the feedback that I got. As a speaker, I custom create the presentations, workshop, strategy facilitation, all of these specifically for the client. And they're really based on experience. The experience trumps everything, because if you think of any time you went to a seminar or college or a class, there's very little information you really remember from it, but you remember how you felt during it. You remember how you felt and what you did after it. So these are the most important things to optimize for. What do you want them to experience? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to say as they walk out of the room afterward? And then we build it toward that, and then start to answer the questions of what do you want them to know and what do you want them to do once they leave. So a speech really based on innovation is one that's very different from the one on hacking or the one of understanding how values work to program a culture. So these are all different topics based on what the needs are of the company, but what we're really doing is looking to create an experience together. So culture hacking is a fascinating topic. It comes back to this idea of what computer hackers do. And most people have a negative association with that, but as a practice, they're doing something really incredible. What a hacker does is look for the vulnerable point within the system, that point where if a small change is made, it can have a huge impact on the rest of the culture. So the idea of culture hacking is actually looking at frustrations, finding where is there a breakdown in culture happening, and where can we then play with it and experiment and actually have fun with trying to do different things that impact the entire system of culture itself. The idea also is that an act of destruction is way more powerful than an act of creation, in the sense of it takes a lot of time and energy to build a skyscraper, but it takes just a moment to knock it down. So if you actually find something that isn't really working well within culture and destroy it, that can be a lot faster of an impact than building a whole new program. And to me, it's the opposite of what this bad word has come up within cultures, which I think is best practices. I really hate that word. I want it to be eliminated from people's vocabularies because people hear a best practice and think, oh, I don't have to do any more thinking. I don't have to play with it. I just have to do what this one other company did and it should work for me. And if it doesn't, then it wasn't my fault. So even using that word best practice makes people stop thinking. Whereas the word hacking makes sure that people take the responsibility of figuring it out and playing with it and trying new and different things. So the culture blueprint has hacks, which are these high leverage techniques that can be done very quickly to create a change within a culture. So the hacking process is really about finding these frustrations of things that aren't working and realizing how to destroy them. So leaders are usually not getting really reliable data and information about what's really going on within the culture. And that's because people just don't feel comfortable sharing the bad news. They don't want to be the messenger of bad news. And even something like a 360, which pulls information and data from everyone within the company that person reports to, you're not really getting the best data either because it's done in a way where a person can distance themselves from it. They're not really held accountable to it, and there's no relationships built through that process. So the question is, how do we hack that feedback process such that leaders are getting the best information on the culture? And the way to do that is to hack the question such that in order to answer it, they have to provide that stuff they probably don't want to talk about. So to do that, you ask the question, what is it that you think I don't want to hear? And then it really makes people answer the question in a way that's very honest, but they get to serve you. Rather than that question, give me some feedback, or how do you think I'm doing? People want to please you. And by answering that question, you get down to that deeper layer of what somebody might be afraid to tell the leader. And that's where you get the most high leverage info that the leader can use to shift culture immediately. So meetings are a really fascinating subunit of culture because a meeting happens in every company. And culture only exists when more than two people are together. So most of the time we're on our computers or doing tasks alone, but a meeting is where culture suddenly happens for just a small moment in time. And people notoriously hate meetings because they're not designed well. They're not designed as a true game. To be a real game, the first principle is to make it opt-in, meaning it's voluntary. Because what happens when you make it required for people who don't want to be there is they're like this energy suck. You know, they really bring the meeting down because you can just sense that they don't want to be there. So the first hack or change of that is to make it completely optional. So you as a leader are saying, look, I know you have a lot to do. If you find this meeting relevant, then please show up. If you've got something more relevant to do, then do that. And what that does, it puts the onus on the meeting convener to make it at least relevant or interesting. And if it's not and nobody shows up because they've got better things to do with their time, that's a really good feedback point. And then once they're there, the idea of making it into a game is to say, on the wall here, we've got these 5 sticky notes of the topics that we got to get through, and actually moving them around the wall like a Kanban board from need to talk about to talking about to done. And so people see it moving like we're keeping score during a game, and keeping a clock out to show that we need to get these all done by a certain time keeps everybody on the same page of looking to get through it quickly to cover everything that needs to be covered. And if you mix that with everybody being on the same page when it comes to rules, who can be on cell phones, who can't, like how are we creating a consistent policy around that? That's how you're creating a great game. Make it opt-in, make it a clear goal, know what the rules are for this meeting, and a way to keep score within the amount of time that we have. And it's amazing how just these small switches in structure can make it something that people look forward to going to meetings rather than dreading them. The beta test is a great way to start any change within culture. And what usually happens is somebody starts off with a program or initiative and there's a lot of resistance because it can involve a lot of time, energy, money, maybe you can't even take it back. So people tend to be resistant to the culture change because it takes a lot of investment. And the idea of a beta is a very limited scope project to test our hypothesis of if this will work. So limiting it in scope, in duration, in time, in the number of people that we're doing it with. So rather than a whole company change, it's just maybe one team, maybe just a division for 3 months, and testing out certain metrics that we're going to determine whether it makes it successful or not. And structuring a beta, and there's a whole plan of this within the culture blueprint called the beta blueprint, and all these different elements and variables, such that it makes it easy to pitch somebody who might have the resources to do this, where they don't have to commit to an entire program, where they don't have to commit a lot of energy, time, money. And in fact, they don't even have to change their beliefs. That way, with the beta test, you can even go up to somebody who doesn't believe you're right and structure it in a way where you're going to test metrics that they care about in a short enough span such that it won't be rolled out to the whole company or to all customers, etc., but a way to test your hypothesis. So that's the beta test, and the reverse beta test is stopping doing something that might not be working. So there may be certain procedures, policies, processes that people are frustrated with that you can say, you know what, we're just going to remove it for a month. And we'll see, does this actually hurt customers? Does this hurt our employees? Is it really doing any damage? Because if we stop it and take energy out of that process and put it somewhere else, there's a lot to be gained. So the reverse beta is about destroying something that doesn't work and seeing, do we even really need that? So culture really comes down to the same thing that the entire business world comes down to, which is agreements. If you think about it, business is just a set of different relationships where people are agreeing, for example, to provide X service for Y compensation. That's all the contracts are agreements. And culture breakdowns happen in those same kind of ways with a breakdown in an agreement. So if you ask somebody why they were disappointed in somebody else at work, they will say one of two answers. No matter what their answer is, it'll either fit into the category of somebody said they were going to do something and they didn't, or that person expected somebody to do something and they didn't. Either way, it's a breakdown in an agreement or just the expression and confirmation of agreement. I think the easiest way to see this in an example everybody can relate to is when you make a reservation at a restaurant. The restaurant wants to maximize those tables to make money on their capacity. And the person taking the reservation would say, thank you, we have you down for 4 people at 7:30. Call us if something changes. And what they've done is just issued a demand. There's no agreement there. And if that person does not call back, they've just lost that table and they've lost money. So instead, the restaurants that are successful have changed that to saying, we've got you down for 4 people at 7:30. Would you please call us if anything changes? Pause. Wait for a response. And then they say yes. And then there's actual agreement. And so what's happening within culture is agreement is constantly assumed by simply issuing demands, telling people what to do. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned from culture is that you cannot tell people what to do. In fact, they will resist it on some level. Whereas people by nature want to opt in. They want to agree to things that they're passionate about. So anything from designing a new person's role to assigning them a task, if you actually take the time to make sure there's agreement and say, do you agree to do this? And if not, why not? And giving somebody the space to actually say no, to say, you know what, I've got these other priorities. I can't do that right now. And giving them the space to say no, then by using agreement, you've got this amazing cell structure for creating great culture across the organization. So bringing on new people, whether it be to the company or to a team, is hugely important because there's no second chance for that first impression that they're going to have. And it's amazing what people do with these first days. Oftentimes it's just, here's your desk, here's the supply closet, here's the bathroom, good luck. I mean, it really simply comes down to that for a lot of people. Maybe they take you out to lunch with some team members and introduce you. As opposed to thinking about it kind of like somebody's first day in high school. Of how much nervousness there is, both socially as well as doing the job well. So for coming into the company, actually taking the time to give somebody a mentor, to be there and be supportive with any question that comes out for a limited amount of time, reduces the amount of hand-holding that somebody has to do later. And also co-creating it, co-designing a relationship, because that's all the culture is relationships. So taking the time to ask certain questions that are in the book, The Culture Blueprint, a whole guide to asking questions such as, what makes for a great boss? How will I know that you're doing well? How do I know that you're okay to give me feedback or disagree with me? And these whole sets of questions for co-designing a relationship. And if you take that time to do it in advance, it will really impress anybody coming into the company because you're treating them like a human being that you're having a relationship with rather than a subordinate that you give demands to and just tell them what to do. So a high-performance team is one where people are really energized. They're passionate. They're working well together. They're also constantly arguing a lot because they're very passionate. And it's safe to argue because it doesn't mean it's something personal. It's just that they're very passionate about the work. They can read each other's minds almost. They're in touch with their intuition. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I found that the key to that is to figure out a way where you can build that skill not doing the job itself, because there's too much pressure doing the job itself. But interestingly, the tenets and principles of improv comedy actually work really well to create a high-performance team. Improv is a way to get people in sync in a way that's really fun. And it allows them to fail, because you just oftentimes fail in improv while having fun. And what's amazing that I found about doing this is sometimes somebody will think they failed, but somebody else can run with it in a way that they never anticipated. So through the principles of improv, principles like yes and, where people need to agree to whatever's going on in the scene and take it further, are ways to get a team in sync. So if I've got a great idea, I think, how can I work with somebody rather than use that idea for myself? So for example, with an improv, if I have this idea for Superman to be in the scene, rather than me coming in and playing Superman, I can give that role to somebody else such that they can come in and be that person. I can say, hey, thank God you're here, Superman. And then I've given that person a gift to work in the scene, and they know who they are in there. And so what we do with improv is we don't start with this kind of performance. It's not done in front of a crowd. A lot of it is just done team member to team member, starting really small with just basic exercises. And what I love about it is it's a practice that can be done for a long time to just build and build that muscle of a team starting to get to know each other, such that when they really start to get to it, it almost feels like they're reading each other's mind and having a fun time at the same time. Open space strategy is the most effective means I've come across to develop the strategy for any organization or team, and it's based on open space technology. What open space technology does is it allows a group to self-organize, anywhere from a group of 3 people to 3,000. And the group gets to determine what the agenda is going to be. They bring up what they're caring the most about and what they want to take responsibility for. They organize the sessions, and they take notes as to what the insights are and what action items came out of it, which gets put into a report that everybody has the next day so that everybody can see it and leadership can see it and take action on it. And it gives the chance for anybody to step up as a leader and run a session. And what it does is it simultaneously does team building and strategy at the same time, because new relationships form and people get to connect based on their passions. And also you're doing the work at the same time. So I recently led one of these sessions at Intuit and also at Tony Hsieh's Downtown Project. And the Downtown Project got so much out of it that they've taken this open space technology format and have used it at their big all-hands meetings with 2,000 people. And it just generates so much engagement, excitement, and energy because the people shape the agenda and leaders get to see what people are passionate about and how they want to move the company forward. Thank you. It's a lot of fun to talk about these things. Thanks so much for taking the time.